Volunteers, they are actually, let me see if I get this right, the citizen volunteer liaisons with the U.S. Embassy. Very, very important role. They keep us informed about the U.S. Panamanian laws, the changes, and how that affects us in the expat community. If you're going to live in a foreign country, you really need to know what's going on, how to live by the laws. And so we really appreciate your service. They've been doing this for 3 years. And Hank graduated from the law school in Davie as well. So thank you for your service. They don't get a penny for this, and we sure appreciate you coming. And then I'm going to just turn everything over to you. Bonnie, are you speaking first? Okay, thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause for all that they do to help us here.
Excuse me, I have to get hooked up to everything. Is this on? Yes, okay. Thank you so much for coming today. We've got a lot to talk about, so I want to get right into it. I'm going to be talking about I'm going to be talking about the more mundane things. This first part of the program, what the embassy does for expats, what we as citizen volunteer liaisons do for expats, and then I'm going to hit the highlights of the things that we get the most questions about, or that I think you need to know the most about. Starting with embassy contact information. I think all of you got the handouts here. I would encourage you to put that someplace safe, because when you need to get in touch with somebody, you usually need it right then, and you don't have time to email all around and try to find out what the addresses and phone numbers are. Excuse me, I'm having a hard time seeing that, so I'm going to have to do this. The American Citizen Services Unit is the part of the embassy that addresses the concerns of expatriates from the United States. Essentially, their job is to ensure the safety and security of the U.S. citizens in Panama. I think the central job here is, in case of emergencies or disasters, they need to be in a position to tell people what to do, how to round them up. And so one of the original jobs, or I guess it's still a job, but it's become harder, of the citizen services volunteers are to keep a running tab of people, of expats. Well, that's impossible in Boquete, as you know. And so people are coming and going all the time, and we have an enormous expat population. So Hank will talk about this a little more, but I encourage all of you to register with the STEP program with the embassy. It's on their website, where you leave contact information about yourself. If anything happens to you, this is what the embassy goes to first, who to contact on your behalf. Because of strict privacy laws, don't expect your neighbor to be able to take care of things for you. It's going to take someone that you've designated, someone that you're related to. Other missions of the office have to do with international child abduction, the arrest of U.S. citizens, death of U.S. citizens. I think this is addressed very well in the hospice and health presentations. They issue death certificates, U.S. death certificates. You have to get a Panamanian birth certificate first, send it to the embassy, and they issue the U.S. death certificate. And of course, do any notifications that might be needed. Victims of crime, they offer help, limited help in this regard. Emergency financial assistance, and I do mean emergency, and these are loans, not grants. So don't count on the embassy to bail you out if you get into financial trouble. They also, of course, do citizenship services and child and family matters. Okay. CLVs have to safeguard the privacy of personal information that's provided in the course of our duties. We refer to the embassy, this is important for you to know, all media or legal inquiries and all requests to explain policies, a government spokesperson, or a consular officer or consular agent. Finally, CLVs aren't compensated, although I'm telling you they should be. First thing I want to talk about very briefly is U.S. passport renewal. Most of you may know about this, but hardly a week passes that I don't get a question about it, so I thought it would be better to bring it up now. There are two ways to make a simple renewal, and that is if there are no issues, all you're doing is renewing your license that's expired after 10 years. You can do it at the U.S. Embassy in Panama City, but you have to make an appointment online. You can't just show up at the embassy. By far the easier way, particularly for people in Boquete, is to do it by DHL courier. The documents required to be sent are the U.S. passport, a completed form DS-82, which is available online and can be completed online. And then one passport size photograph, and if you have any name change, some evidence of that. And finally, a non-refundable application fee of $110 via local certified check made payable to, listen to this, very important because of the banks, not the embassy, must be made payable to U.S. Embassy Panama, where the banks won't accept it, so of course the embassy won't. The good thing is that mailboxes, etc., knows this drill. If you get your stuff together, they can take the passport photo, they can send it to the embassy, they can walk you through the whole thing. So you show up with your passport, your old passport, the form that you've completed and printed, and your application fee, the certified check. They will do the photograph, they will take care of DHL-ing everything to Panama City. It will be back within 2, maximum 3 weeks. I don't know of anyone who's waited longer than 2, but I suppose there can be times when they're particularly busy that it might go into 3. Proof of life. This is both an easy and a complicated question. First of all, when to file. This is the easy part. If the last 2 digits of your Social Security number end in 00 through 49, you file in even numbered years. If the final digits of your Social Security number are 50 through 99, you file in odd numbered years. The forms are mailed out between April and October. And usually they go in May or June, has been my experience. They're mailed only to a physical address within the country. In our case, it would be general delivery, Boquete, Panama. Now, here's where it gets sticky. Beneficiaries, Social Security beneficiaries living outside of the U.S. must have a foreign mailing address on record in order to get this notice, not a Miami address. This could cause a suspension of benefits until the address is updated. The reason this is problematical is you can't, unless you've joined the Social Security online system before you came to Panama, you can't join it once you're here. It won't allow people out of the country to join. Now, I talked last week with a guy from the big main regional office for Latin America in the Dominican Republic, and I got a lot of explanations from him about this. I've had questions in my mind about it for forever. And he gave a long-winded explanation for that I didn't fully understand, and it's probably not important. The important thing is to know that they say you can't use your Miami mailing address. You will not get a suspension of benefits form to a forwarding address, only here. The second thing is you can't file unless you have received that form. And it has to be that form that's barcoded, has a barcode on it. So it's not possible just to make a note on your calendar and every 2 years download the form, fill it out and send it in. They want the specific form. It's important to understand, I think, the reason for this, and as I understand it, is because obviously it's called the Foreign Enforcement Questionnaire. It's to make sure you're alive. Now, it doesn't go to people in the States, and I have to believe that if somebody has a better explanation than this, I would welcome it, that there are already all kinds of processes in line in the States for knowing when someone dies. There are, death certificates, notices, government agencies find out these things. But that's much more difficult. The government keeps records on all that. That's much more difficult in a foreign country. So the purpose of this form is to make sure that you're still alive when they start sending your Social Security checks. I'm sure it's also fraud prevention. You've all heard of people cashing in Social Security checks of other people. This would be particularly easy abroad if the government didn't keep tabs on it. A reminder is sent in October, so you essentially have to start checking the mailbox, the post office in Boquete from April to October until you receive it. Now, I'm going to go off script here a little bit. The question I've always had is why some people receive it and some don't. And my original thought was, well, maybe if their IRS address is in the States, maybe that doesn't trigger it. Well, the guy in the Dominican Republic said no, the IRS, this might surprise you, the IRS computers are not integrated at all, do not exchange information with Social Security computers, so that's not it. I thought, well, maybe if you, whatever reason, but I said, I've never received it. I told him, I said, I've lived here 12 years and I've never received this form. And I put my address on IRS, it's Boquete, and that's when he said, that doesn't matter, that doesn't matter one bit. Now what does matter is if you have joined the Social Security system, the computer programming online where you can keep track of your benefits, keep track of a lot of things. If your name is in that system, it's living in Boquete, you will receive your form in Boquete. My name is not in the system because I didn't register with the IRS before I came here, and I can't register with it now. I have a forwarding address. I've never received a form. So it says here, if you have a forwarding address doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work in the sense you don't get the form, but it doesn't, I don't think it triggers anything. But I guess my advice to you would be, try to find out if you're within the system. On a trip back to the States, maybe log in, find out what's going on. If you can't find out what's going on, you're going to be trekking back and forth to the post office. Now, if your benefits are suspended, they will be suspended in February. If they're suspended, you will get that last notice in October, and then if you haven't filed it by then, the benefits will be suspended in February, and a lot of benefits were suspended this February, judging from the emails and phone calls I got. You have to complete, and I'm assuming all of you here receive Social Security in your own name. It's a little bit different if you get your money through a representative payee. But assuming you get your checks directly to you, you complete the form SSA 7162. That's also online. You make sure that you include your Social Security number. You sign and date the form. Email a scanned copy of it to, and this address is on your sheet, the San Jose, Costa Rica regional office. The subject of the email should be the FEQ, that's the Foreign Enforcement Questionnaire, then dash Panama, and your name under which you receive benefits, or you can fax it to them. There are notices about this online. You then, after scanning and mailing, you then have to mail it to the Social Security Administration in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. All of these addresses are online. Now, one other thing, I'm sorry I forgot to mention, I should have had this on the last page. When I was talking to the guy in the Dominican Republic, he also mentioned that if your check is deposited in, your Social Security check is deposited in a Panama bank, that triggers the filing. So I thought, okay, that's how I'm off the hook, I think. My check goes into the U.S. I'm not registered in Social Security, and they don't know from the IRS that I live in Boquete. So, but if your money goes to a bank account in Panama, chances are that triggers them sending you the form, the proof of life form, to the post office. The good news, so they say, is the benefits will be reinstated within 5 to 10 days from receiving your email or fax. I tend to question this, and I question it on the basis of what the guy in the Dominican Republic told me. But we had a long conversation with him. He was very forthcoming, very, very helpful. He said that that through Central and South America, there are only a few regional, super regional offices. And in those offices, there are a total of 17 employees that deal with Social Security. Judging from the number of people who don't file around here, I would think throughout the whole Central and South America, it has to be in the hundreds, if not thousands. So I asked him about this, and he readily admitted that yes, there are times of the year when they can't meet their deadlines. They just have such a horrible influx of questions and problems. And that time would probably be February, the very time you would, want to get it reinstated. Now, as I'm sure you've all heard, federal benefits are no longer handled out of the Panamanian embassy. Something else I learned from the Dominican Republic gentleman was that for some reason I didn't know, I always just assumed it was part and parcel of the embassy responsibility, is that, and if you think about it, this makes sense, Social Security is not a part of the Department of State, which the embassy is. And what they have done in the past is just act as an intermediary for the Department of State in handling Social Security problems. That came to a halt. The Department of State put a halt to it and said, no, we want to handle our own stuff. Withdrew the funding that they'd provided for employees in the embassy to handle Social Security questions. So now all of these go to another regional office. This is not a super regional, this is a lesser regional office in San Jose, Costa Rica. And this is here. The best way to contact them is they have an online form. They say that's the best. Whoops. God. There we go. The best way to contact them, so they say, is to use their online form. I've written them 3 times on an online form and not gotten a response. Or to send an email to this email address. You also can call them. The number is on your sheet of paper.
If there's no exchange, you don't know how to get it to go through looking at this form. You have to dial 00.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's why we put that on the form.
But you didn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, 00 in front of that. I'm missing a slide here. Immigration. This is called the new immigration regulations. Now, this essentially only affects people who are in the country on a tourist visa. Once you have a permanent visa, whether it's a pensionado, investors, whatever kind, or once you have even applied for that, you get a temporary permanent visa, and you no longer have to worry about the pretty draconian immigration laws that they're now enforcing. Again, this has been the law for a long time, but they've stepped up enforcement of it. On March the 6th, 2017, they issued this edict that said people with tourist visas must prove that they are tourists and not permanent residents, effectively putting an end to border hopping. Those of you who are new may not be familiar with this term. It was people who lived here for years and years, and just once every 6 months or 3 months, I can't remember what it was now, would run up to Costa Rica, stay out for a day or two, and come back, and that made their tourist visa good for another few months. The whole idea of this was to get around that, put a stop to it. Some say, although, of course, the embassy, nobody else will confirm this because it's a Panamanian issue, not a U.S. issue, was because of the problems experiencing, excuse me, with refugees from Venezuela, some from Colombia, from Nicaragua, people from Colombia, for example, coming here to work, actual refugees from political situations in Venezuela and Nicaragua. There was this just huge influx of people, and allegedly they were taking Panamanian jobs and being a drain on Panamanian social services. So the purpose behind this was to put an end to that. Now, there's been a lot of discussion just in the last few weeks on Facebook, people saying, well, so-and-so went out, they only had to stay out 3 days in Costa Rica. And then somebody else says, oh yeah, but a few months ago, so-and-so went out and they were made to stay the full month. So I contacted the embassy and I said, has this changed? We were told 30 days. Now I'm getting reports that people can once again just be gone for 3 days. Their reply was, what it says is you have to be gone 30 days. If, in some limited instances, there are personnel at the border that allow you to stay 3, that's fine, and that, from what I'm reading, that seems to be the practice now at the border. But you can't count on it. The law is still 30 days. There's also some indication that if you do it once, you can get away with 3 days, but if you try it a second time, they will, come down on you. But that's not an official thing. The official is 30 days for every single time you need to leave the country. Now, who does this affect? It doesn't affect people with permanent visas. It affects those people who want to be here longer as sort of a trial period. The conventional wisdom is don't move all your stuff down and buy a house and all until you know whether you want to stay, until you know what microclimate suits you, et cetera, et cetera. So that really affects people who are trying to do this because that only gives them 6 months and then they have to leave for a month. And people who are ineligible for a residency visa for a number of reasons, including that they can't gather the required paperwork in time. And that's why I routinely tell people, if you plan on coming down permanently and getting your visa, start your paperwork before you come, because it could take longer than the 6 months. People who can't meet the income or investment requirements, so they think, oh well, maybe I can get by with going back and forth more, but that's exactly what the government is trying to stop. And a really big one, if they can't get FBI clearance, whether for former criminal convictions or get it within the 6-month period. That's also, by the way, very time consuming to get the fingerprint thing back. So you need to start that early. And or fingerprint issues. And a number of people have reported that, a lot of people, not just a number, a lot of people have reported that they can't get fingerprints because of their age or because of their work history or whatever. Their fingerprints have been worn out. And so the question here is, what do they do? There is no alternative to the fingerprint requirement. They absolutely require it. There's nothing you can substitute for it. So now there are a lot of ways of getting fingerprints. There are ways that are more successful than others. So if you can't get one here, or with just the ink, you can try some other things. But there are people who've tried them all, and they just can't get fingerprints. So the alternative here is to have a criminal history report from Panama. But to get that, it's important that you can only apply for one after you have been in Panama for 2 uninterrupted years. Now, if you perceive a contradiction here, so do I. And if you overstay your visa, it incurs a fine of $50 for every month overstay. Now, I spent a long time trying to figure out what was meant by this. I wrote the embassy. They, of course, and by the way, the embassy is very, very cautious about getting involved in interpreting Panamanian law. What they do is, if you ask them about a law, they tell you what it is, and that's it. They won't interpret it. And so when I questioned about this, they gave me the 30 days out thing, and contact the FBI about the fingerprints, et cetera, et cetera. So finally, I got desperate, and Price Peterson, God love him, who is here today, by the way, he was warden in Boquete for a number of years. How many years, Price? 30, yeah. So he knew the ropes, and he had a lot of contacts in the embassy and in Panama as a result of that long service. So he contacted someone who was a former head of immigration for Panama and just asked for his help in interpreting this. This man went to the immigration office to see if he could get any clarification. And I'm going to read you what he responded, because I don't want to misquote it. Quote, went to migration today. The director was not in, so I talked with Ms. Urales, who was an attorney at the legal department. She confirmed the instructive email is correct, and apparently they don't consider it a contradiction. If a tourist is caught staying over 5 months for not having started his immigration process, he will charge $50 for each month overstayed, and given 7 days to leave the country and come back after 1 month if desired, or to start the residence documentation process before he goes, required to go. If the tourist decides not to start the documentation process nor leave for 1 month and is caught again, he will be fined $50 for the additional months overstayed. There will be no deportation or any other repercussions. After 2 years, when the tourist goes to present the documentation to legalize his residence, that is after he's gotten his Panama criminal history report and completed everything, He will be fined for the remaining months not previously charged, $50 a month, for the total of the months overstayed, if not previously caught, but will be able to present a Panamanian police record instead of an FBI record. That is how the law is interpreted until today. In my opinion, blah, blah. So this looks like a really viable alternative. If you try to do this, you know, okay, I can't get my fingerprints, I can't get my criminal history check cleared, so I'll just stay for the 2 years. If I get caught, I pay $50 a month for the months I was here, and over the 6 months. And if I'm not caught, I'm home free. And nothing will happen if I am caught. They won't kick me out of the country. They'll just fine me. The problem is that, and this is also a problem in the 6-month requirement, is that, I think I'm on the last page here. People are allowed to stay in Panama 6 months on a tourist visa. You can drive only 30 days on a tourist visa. So,
99, 3 months. 3 months.
I'm sorry, 3 months.
Yeah.
What did I say?
30 days.
Oh, I'm sorry, 3 months, 90 days. So half the time you're here, you won't be able to drive. And if you try this 2-year alternative, you got a year and a half that you won't be able to drive. And the possibility or the chances of getting caught for that are substantial because of all the roadblocks. You know, I don't think I've ever had anyone in Panama, any official, stop and ask to see my documentation, my passport or my cedula. But I've been stopped numerous times and asked to see driver's license and then, you know, the passport. In other words, you're just walking around town, you're not going to, chances are there's not going to be any issue. So that's where this stands. Now, I think the lesson here is find out, you know, early on, or even preferably before you come to Panama, if you're going to be able to meet these requirements. Do you have the requisite income? Do you have the criminal history check from the FBI, etc., before you start making big plans for the future? There are people who come here. Well, for instance, now this was before they started enforcing this. I had friends who came here without or they couldn't prove the requisite money per month. You know, that has to be a certain kind of thing. It has to be in perpetuity. It can't. And they were coming, they were just living on investments, but that didn't qualify under Panama. But they were too young to get Social Security, and that was going to be their perpetual retirement basis for applying. So for, gosh, a number of years, I don't know how many, they did the border hopping until finally they got Social Security, they became eligible for Social Security. So this is no longer possible. You might get an extension if you're lucky at the border, but probably no more than one. And that's just my guess. I don't know. I'm operating here from anecdote. But you really want to do as much of this ahead of time as you can. Let me see what time it is. I'm going to take a few questions because I know you will have forgotten them by the time we get to
Yeah, we're only going to take a couple questions now, and then Hank Landis will speak. You wave your hand when you get the microphone. Don't talk till you get the microphone in front of you. And let's keep them short. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, and also keep them general. If you have a personal issue, you need to contact one of us personally or contact the embassy. But if it's a general issue, something you didn't understand, etc., I'd be glad to entertain it.
Okay, I have my Social Security deposited.
Speak into the microphone.
I have a Social Security deposited in a U.S. bank. but Social Security also has a mailing address in Miami. So this proof of life, I've never received one. What should I do?
You're in the same situation I am. Nothing. Hope. This is not clear cut again, you know, who gets and who doesn't. My best guess is if you have a Miami address, they say that doesn't excuse you from filing, but it doesn't trigger filing. They don't pay any attention to the forwarding address. Apparently they just look at the U.S. address. And again, you know, I keep saying, this is my guess, there's not a clear-cut policy on this. But the things that are the clearest are, if you register with Social Security as a resident of Panama, a Boquete, you will get the form here. And if you had your Social Security check deposited in a Panama bank, you will get the form.
My next question is, why does the U.S. Embassy in Panama City have 1 hour a day, 4 days a week for phone calls?
I have no idea.
That's
I've asked them about that. The best thing they can say is that they, 'cause I just can't believe they're that busy, but they say that they prefer to have things in writing. And so they prefer emails because then they have a record of what the person said, what they said, etc. That makes some sense, but I pointed out to them that you know, in complicated situations, people want to talk to them. They don't want to write it all out. Other people aren't comfortable writing.
and then they tell you to send all your questions to Costa Rica.
Well, that's for federal benefits.
Okay, we're going to keep probably one question per person, so
Okay.
everyone gets a chance, and
Okay.
Mr. Landis. Okay, we have one question here and another one back there, and then Hank, why don't you take the floor?
I don't have a question, I just wanted to share that I'm doing the 2-year residency visa because I couldn't get fingerprints. And I had to go back to the States to resolve a problem with Social Security, which I couldn't get done through the embassy. My attorney went to immigration in David, and I was told I could leave the country for less than 30 days. I must return before 30 days. I also paid the $50 a month fine for the time that I had been over. So if you're doing a 2-year residency, you need to go back to the States. As long as you go...
I wouldn't count on it. That's not what the law says.
Without...
Be a lawyer's
Well, that's what I
interpretation.
have done. So,
I understand it worked for you. This might not work for everyone. It's just like the border hopping. Some people can get by with 3 days. Others are made to stay 30. So, yes, at the very least, someone should do what you did. Go to immigration and get them to say, preferably in writing, that it's, you know, they approved this.
You can get a handout, by the way. This is going to be posted online. Is that correct, Mr. Landis? Some of you didn't get a handout, so it'll be posted online. One more question, and then Mr. Landis.
Bonnie, could you please repeat the metric to determine whether you're going to here?
Yes. Let's go back to that. Yep.
049, even. Yeah, 00 to 49, it's even years.
There it is in writing, right there. The terminal digits 0 through 49. You file in even numbered years. 50 through 99. You file in odd numbered years. We'll probably have time for more questions after Hank, I hope, but I don't want to impinge on his time, so I'm going to turn it over to him now.
thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you very much for the information. Good morning, citizens of Boquete, residents, visitors. My presentation involves the Panamanian laws and the way that it affects foreigners.
Can you go back?
The Supreme Court of the law in Panama is the Panamanian Constitution. It is important to note that Article 7 of this Constitution says that Spanish is the language of the Republic. It is up to all of you to make it a point to learn the language if you're going to stay in Panama, and do not expect the authorities to speak to you in English. The Articles 8 through 16 involve issues with naturalization and foreigners. With Article 15, both Panamanian and foreigners within the territory of the Republic are subject to the Constitution and the laws. That means traffic laws. That means knowing that if you step out of bounds, you're probably going to be under more scrutiny than if you were a Panamanian. That involves things such as Bonnie already mentioned, traffic violations, traffic licenses and stuff like that are absolutely something that you have to keep up with. She mentioned something about the fact that you have the right to be in Panama for a period of 6 months as a tourist. However, the Department of Transportation has never changed the requirement that you can only drive for a period of 3 months. If you get caught on the 91st day, you're subject to, the car is subject to be confiscated or taken from you. You're subject to fines and things like that. And Article 17 says that the authorities are instituted to protect life, honor, property of both the nationals and foreigners anywhere within the jurisdiction of Panama. Article 20 says that Panamanians and foreigners are equal under the law. Here to tell you that if you are right next to a Panamanian and they're going to take somebody's word against the other, the Panamanian's going to win. As I said, you're under a lot more scrutiny than anybody else, and so your behavior will definitely be absorbed by those around you. However, because of reasons associated with work, health, morality, public and national economy, security, the equality may be subordinated to special conditions, or some undetermined activities may be denied. Best examples I can give you of that is work. If you are a professional, unless you're a citizen, you're not allowed to practice those specific professions. As Bonnie already mentioned, I graduated law school here in Panama, but I cannot practice simply because I'm not a citizen of Panama. The law or authorities may take measures that exclusively affect foreigners or certain countries in case of war or in conformity with international treaties. What's that important is, for example, Venezuela. In order for somebody to come into Venezuela, from Venezuela to Panama, they must have a stamped approved visa in their passport. That's something that normally is not required of citizens of other nations. Human rights. Article 4 of the Panamanian Constitution says that they adhere to international law. Panama adheres to international law. The Panamanian Constitution provides for freedom of speech, religion, the press, assembly, and petition. However, it's important for all of you to know that many of this, such as petitions and things like that, are going to cause some resentment from those individuals around you. They might look at you in a different way with scrutiny, and so you don't want to be in a situation where you're calling attention to yourselves. You have the right to transit. This is important because of the fact that in order for you to transit, you must keep your documents to yourselves, like your passport, especially if you're only a tourist. You must keep your passport. And in the case of driving, as I said before, if you're driving under the 90-day permit, you must be able to prove that you have been here for a period of less than the 90 days. Your correspondence and personal documents are private and are not subject to search without a warrant. It's human rights that involves internationally practically every nation that says you have those rights. However, here again, there are situations where they're going to demand information from you, and it becomes a gray matter as to what you can produce and what you cannot produce.
Mr. Landis, can this read out the home? The second one.
Okay.
Home, it says the same thing for home.
Yes, correct. Any other questions on that? Okay. All right, human rights again. You may not be arrested without a written order by competent authority. Competent authority means a judge, and a judge within your jurisdiction. And you're entitled to a copy of that warrant upon your request. You may not be arrested. You may be arrested by anybody if you're caught in the process of committing a crime, but then you must be presented to the authorities as soon as possible. In any event, you may not be held for more than 24 hours without a competent order from a competent authority. You must be informed immediately why you are being detained, along with your right to an attorney, this is pretty much addresses what we call the Miranda rights in the United States, where you do have the right to an attorney to assist you in judicial and police matters. You are presumed innocent until you're proven guilty in a public trial. Got questions about that? It's not necessarily the way it works.
That doesn't apply to speeding tickets, right?
No. You may not be imprisoned, detained, or arrested for debts or civil obligations. That you are also may not be tried for the same crime twice. That's what we call double jeopardy in the United States. You may not testify against yourself, spouse, or family. Boy, do I have issues with that one. You may not be sentenced to death. You may not be expatriated, and your property may not be confiscated. Habeas corpus. You have the right for habeas corpus, which is a writ requiring a person is to be brought before a judge or into a court regardless of the time or holidays, especially to secure the person's release, unless grounds are shown for the detention, and those are lawful grounds. A habeas corpus is something that is prevalent in international law and our U.S. Constitution. And it is pretty much an action that you may take to gain immediate attention about your capture and your detention. The law and reality. Police officers are minimally trained and seldom get continuing education updates. I can assure you that this is trouble. Be on your best behavior when dealing with the police, regardless of whether you're right or wrong. Not only the police, but governmental officials. You don't want to go to an agency and demand your rights. You may be they may involve you in a judicial and financial nightmare. And if you really think about it, you may ultimately win, but at what expense? Finally, I want to talk about what Bonnie already mentioned, which is the Smart Travel Enrollment Step program, which is the STEP program. Again, it is a U.S. Department of State program where it allows a U.S. citizen traveling abroad to enroll within the local U.S. embassy or consulate. That's important. It's important because if something happens, somebody needs to be able to get a hold of you. There is a way and some type of link that you are where you are. Some of you might be a little hesitant. You don't want government to know where you are. I can assure you the government knows where you are, unless you unless you have a dual passport or something like that. You're not going to escape their scrutiny or awareness. By registering in the STEP program, you're eligible to receive the latest security information, the updates, travel advisories, messages about the U.S. Embassy, events and services. Here's your website to enroll right back here. Okay. Okay. Any questions?
Okay, we're gonna, again, wave your hand and we're gonna find you the mic. One question.
I have heard in the past that United States citizens, non-Panamanian citizens, are forbidden by law to campaign for or to be a part of local or national elections in Panama. With an election year coming up here in Panama, can you verify whether that's true or not? I mean, I've heard you can't even wear a Martinelli for President t-shirt. Sorry.
Under the Constitution, you have the same rights as a Panamanian to be able to join in campaigns and things like that. However, as I mentioned before, don't forget that you're under scrutiny, and that might become an issue. Yes.
Over here, this is probably for Barney. Another possible indicator of whether you're in the Social Security system and going to receive the proof of life form might be when you get your payments. I registered back and I could register before residing here. I used Miami and then I didn't start claiming benefits till after I lived here. I get my benefits direct deposited on the 3rd day of the month. Which I
Where
understand-
are the deposited?
in the States, in Wells Fargo, another bank. But the deposit date is not connected to my birthday. It is strictly the 3rd of the month, which I understand is for foreign residents. So I may find out in February that that triggered my proof of life form that I never got.
I know in the past that the consulate in San Jose, Costa Rica has come to Boquete to the library to answer questions and help people locally. Do you know if they're coming back anytime soon?
No. The embassy, occasionally comes too, but they come 2 to 3 times a year. And at that time, they do passport services, notarized documents, which, by the way, I want to address. And they used to do federal benefits then, they don't now. And that's why apparently they prevailed upon Costa Rica to come at one time. But there's no guarantee that they will be back or when they will be back. And even when the embassy comes, when we get notice of it, it's usually about 2 weeks. So thank you for asking that question because I get it all the time. When will the embassy be back? When will they be back? We don't know. The notary issue, I want to return to that. I checked this very carefully last week because I get a number of questions on that. The only place in Panama you can get a U.S. notary is at the embassy. There may be people around Panama who hold a U.S. Government, I think it goes by state, commission to be a notary that's restricted to that state. So just keep that in mind. Now the idea that you might not get caught. In fact, chances are you wouldn't get caught on that, except to the extent that if a contract is ever brought into question, one of the first things to do is check the notary. And if it's found that it was improperly notarized, you could be in trouble.
See that? Announcement. President.
Hi. I just wanted to share my experience last year. I am registered with Social Security as living here in Panama, although my checks are deposited in the U.S., but I did not check the post office here often enough. And my proof of life form got sent back to the U.S. last summer, and they immediately suspended my payments and stopped my Medicare Part B because it was returned. So my warning to everyone is to please check the post office here frequently. I understand, but I'm not sure if this is true, that they return mail after 1 month. And your Social Security statements are probably there right now for tax purposes. But the lady from Costa Rica that was here at the Boquete Library was very helpful in getting me reinstated, but it was a long, drawn-out process.
It was not 10 days. Thank you for that. I didn't know that. I think that's worth. I thought they just kept it for probably a year or so. That puts a pretty big burden on you. You've got to go to that post office often. The form might arrive and be sent back.
We have one last question, and then any other questions can be sent via that contact information on the paper you got. And then Mr. Landis has an announcement to make after this question. This will be the last one. Thank you.
This is on. This question has to do with our rights, and the human rights, freedom of speech particularly. I have heard that we must be very careful about what we say about establishments, business, providers, medical care, and not to publish or say anything negative, because that could be an issue with the authorities. Can you elaborate on that, please?
As I was saying before, you have the same rights as a Panamanian, but the truth of the matter and reality of the matter is that you're under scrutiny. Everything that you say, anything that you publish is going to be under scrutiny. So if you don't want undue attention brought to you, I would stay away from that stuff. Now, announcement. Over the years, I've been very involved in civic matters and I've participated in the communal junta, which is the gathering of the representatives here in Boquete. I've provided assistance to the Justice of the Peace, previously were known as corregidoras or corregidores. I've also provided assistance to the police and to agencies that have asked for my assistance in one way or another. Many of these things that I've done, I've pretty much not within the scope of the embassy. And so, accordingly, I am no longer a representative of the embassy. To me, it's been an honor to be able to represent you as a CLV. But I can assure you that now that I don't have the oversight of the embassy, I'm going to be able to provide with any type of assistance that you all might have. And my desire is that I can do that without having to think about violations of the embassy in any way. I do also want to take the opportunity to introduce you to your new CLVs.
Hi.
Okay.
I'm leaving too.
Okay.
Not leaving.
Okay. That you might want to say that yourself. Bonnie Williams is going to be leaving also the position, so that two new bloods are going to be coming into this function. I would like to introduce you first to Denise Rogers, who is going to be your new CLV. And Jorge Chin, George Chin. I can assure you those two people were scrutinized by us. They're fantastic individuals. They're very much wanting to provide assistance to everybody. And I think that you're going to be very pleased with our selection. Buddy?
They will be in touch with you soon with updated contact information for them that will be published in News Boquete, the forums, and Facebook. So just watch out for that. Brandy?
I just want to say,
We're going to also ask the two new CLVs to speak. Would you just say a few things to the people also? Thank you. Just a couple minutes. Okay? If you would.
I just want to say thank you. You all have done a yeoman's job. It's been never-ending and focused. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Would you like to say a few things and introduce yourselves? Just for 2 more minutes, and then everyone can go and have lunch.
Hi, my name is Denise Rogers. I live in the Jaramillo subdivision. I am a lifelong cheerleader, and if there's anything I can do to make your lives better, let me know.
Hi, I'm George Chin. I'm probably one of the youngest expats you'll see in the Boquete area. I live in the Santa Lucia neighborhood. Many of you probably know my father-in-law, Thomas Tolson. He's in the audience, he's in the back. So if you're a member of the Rotary, you'll see him around, and please get a hold of him.
Denise and George speak fluent Spanish.
Make sure you turn your phones on before you leave. Take your trash with you, Mr. Landis. Anything else to say?